office?
Yep. We were able to use some COVID money to replace the carpet with floors that are tile or the Pergo stuff that makes it a lot easier to be able to clean.
I noticed that there seemed to be a lot of trucks there, and I thought, well, this is the perfect time when everybody's out of their office.
Yep. And not only was it perfect time because everybody was out, but we didn't have to pay for it.
Oh, yes.
So
it was a win-win.
It was a win-win. All right, we'll tell you what we'll do. Let's get this. Okay, we're streaming now. We'll go ahead and just hit record. And we are recording.
Oh, I see it in my corner, live on YouTube and recording. I can see the little symbols. So now I don't have to ask anymore.
Yeah. So, all right, well, we'll go ahead and call it to order at 7:05. I'll take some minutes here while Terry's, looks like she's talking to Jim, so maybe he's having phone issues. Roll call. I'm here. McCreary will be late. Hoke Rattle is hopefully on the phone. Mauger.
Present.
And Williamson.
Yes.
All right. Well, that gives us 3, so we have a quorum, so we can at least get started. Terry is on, and I know we have, I think, one visitor on as well. We'll come to in a minute. So the first is the approval of the minutes from January 14th meeting.
I personally had no issue with them. They seemed very much verbatim.
Mr. Hookrattle is calling in. He was having some issues with the passcode.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounded like a motion to accept the minutes as written from Mauger.
Consider it as.
There was one statement that I was quoted that wasn't grammatically correct. Let me find it again. Okay, it's under old business, the 1, 2, 3rd dot down. Williamson was thinking, said that the commission, I'm sure I didn't say, well, I think we either need to choose thinking or said.
Okay.
But we don't need both. Okay. Sorry, Barb, if you're the typist, I just
could get input. Do they feel something? Okay. So we could strike was thinking so that line would read Williamson said that the commission could get input as to whether they feel something is needed. Or if you don't recall saying it, we can say.
Oh, no,
Williamson
I said it.
thinking.
I remember saying that, because we were discussing. Okay. And right after that, you said nobody comes. They like to complain on social media, right. But they don't like to actually come and be a part of it. And so, yes, All right. I said that the commission could get input, and then your response followed that. So I just was checking to make sure that I was quoted accurately, and I was. And Mr. Mauger, you made quite a few statements. So if you've approved yours as accurate, then I will second your motion.
All right. So it'll be a motion at this point to, that your correction there is what we'll call a Scrivener's error to correct the grammar on it. It's not substantive. So we've got a motion to approve the minutes with that one Scrivener's error in a second. So I was just about to say roll call, but I don't know if Terry's back on yet. So Mauger.
Yes.
And Williamson.
Yes.
And I will approve. And Hoke Rattle. Jim, you on yet? Yes.
Yes,
All right. Yes, you're on. And yes, do you approve the minutes?
yes.
All right. So, all right. Minutes have been approved subject to that one Scrivener's correction. So we will move on then to visitors, and I believe Bev Kenny is on. And at least I see her listed. Have you and Steve on? Do you have anything for visitors?
Yes, I'm on. Steve is out of the state this week, but I'm just here to observe,
Okay.
interested in
All
what's
right.
going on around me.
Well, hey, you're proving me wrong, because last meeting we talked about how no one attends, so now we have someone attending. So thank you.
There, way to go. Thanks, Bev, for backing me up.
All right.
All right. So our first thing then is on old business is our short-term rentals, our continued discussion. Barb had circulated the submitted definitions and the expectations that had been sent in with this. And I was trying to think of the best way to, proceed forward, because it's such a large thing. And I'm wondering if once we narrow down a definition and narrow down our expectations, if at that point it wouldn't be best to start with a draft ordinance so that we can see it in paper and say, we like this, we don't like this, we need to change this, as opposed to, once we get the definition and what we want to do, then we can start with the details. But sometimes it's easier to start with something in front of you as opposed to just talking about it. Does that make sense?
Yes, I would agree.
I agree.
All right. So let's just start. We have a couple of definitions. Hopefully everybody got them passed out earlier this week. I'm looking at the spreadsheet that Barb put everything on. It's just easy that way. So I'll just open it up on the definitions. We've got a couple different options on there. There's one where we've got eliminate bed and breakfast, and we have a short-term rental unit that then breaks down into owner-occupied and commercial short-term. And then we've got another short-term rental talking about renting for less than 30 consecutive days. In looking through those, what did everyone think? Did one of them jump out at you? Do we like one? Do we not like one?
My issue with the commercial short-term rental unit was that only would separate it if it was operated as a bed and breakfast by the owner of that property. Now, if they rented it to someone else who was living there, then all of a sudden, even if that renter, who's a long-term renter, is using that as their primary residence, but also as a bed and breakfast type room, that creates an issue.
It does, and I think Barb passed out all the things. That is my definitions, that short-term rental unit and then owner-occupied and commercial. And my intent behind that was where we had talked at the last meeting, where I like the idea of only an owner of the parcel can operate a short-term rental to avoid that very problem. What did they call it? Airbnb. There was a name for it. Anyway, where people get properties and then they rent them to someone else, and then that person rents it as an Airbnb. We wanted to avoid that. So my intent in drafting that definition was that we're not going to allow a person renting a property to then rent it for Airbnb.
I think we had that listed in the expectations, number 21. Proof of either ownership of the property or written permission from the property owner allowing proposed use as a short-term rental unit.
Right.
So do we need it in the definition, or can it just stand as an expectation?
Well, I think what we can do is, like I said, once we get the definition done, we can go through these expectations and, you know, some of them are similar, combine them, say yes on them. Some of them are a little in conflict, and then figure out what we want, and then put those expectations into a draft piece of legislation so that we can see how it would interoperate. In my head, you have the definition, but then one of the provisions of the policy or the ordinance would be only owners of the parcel can operate.
Right.
Okay.
So I think one of the things, Kay, I want to say, when I use zoning rules and regulations and I read a section such as this number 21, I would right away then refer back to the definition section to see how that's defined. So I
Okay.
think that's kind of what the mayor was saying, is that I think we need both the definition of what it means, and then down, when it's down in the verbiage, if you want to revert back, you can see exactly what the intent of that was.
Okay, see, I didn't receive the document for input on definitions. I only received a document for expectations.
Well, we can, it's okay. We got some suggestions here, and we can just work them as we go.
So Ken, if we address that concern in what we come up with, that, are you okay at that point then with the commercial rental unit definition?
Yeah, I would not be against that definition, but that was what I considered, a sticking point on it. It's like
Right.
with Rick and Robin's property at 501. Yes, they own it, but they actually own it through a holding company that then rents it. So it's indirect.
It's indirect, but because it's their business that owns it.
Yeah, that'd be good.
And so the business that owns it could do it, but not, if it was, well, let's just take let's take theirs, because theirs is kind of a unique one. Let's just take someone Airbnb-ing a house. If I were doing it, I would set it up in a business for liability standpoints. That would make it a commercial one because it's not owner occupied. But then if I rented it to John Smith and John decided to use it as an Airbnb, we want our policy to prohibit that. But I think I get what you're getting at. I can play a little more with the definition to try to make it more clear on that. Okay. What about the one below at number 3? Talks about for less than 30 days. Do we want to? That one says 30 days. The definition I had at the top was anything less than 271 days. And quite frankly, the reason I came up with 271 days is that's 9 months plus a day. And we're not a college town, but there are branches popping up all around us. Lancaster and Pickerington both have OU branches, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. Students could potentially look at something, and they tend to look for 9-month leases or 10-month leases. And to me, that is more of a regular rental. not quite a year, but it's more of a regular rental. So I went less than 9 months for that. But then the other one here, like I said, has, less than 30 days. So someone could rent a room or a home for 1 to 30 days. Do we want to put a time frame on it? And if so, how do we want to define it in there?
I think the other documents that we looked at were 30 days or less.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I tend to agree with that.
And just so I'm clear when we're talking about, it doesn't mean someone can't rent it to a person for more than 30 days. It's offered for less than 30 days.
To be considered short term.
Okay. 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 I think the next one running down these means occupancy fee or room dwelling by a transient guest. Running short term, taxes, okay. What else looking at these? Because when we get into some of the definitions here, like number 6, we're talking about in the definition here, that starts to get into some of the, I think, the policy expectations we expect. So let's just start hopping into the expectations. I'm going to start at that number 6 in the definition though, because it talks about making sure there's inspections, escape plans, trash pickup, BCI checks, fees, and operates under the commercial building code. So let me ask, if I were to offer a room in my house on Airbnb, 3 nights a month for whatever reason, do we want the commercial building code to apply to my home then? Is that the intent? Is that how we want it to do? Or do we only want like a commercial building code to apply to a commercial short-term rental?
I don't think that the commercial code crosses over to a residential dwelling.
Right.
I do feel that we need to have a fire/safety inspection, which would make sure there's, we're not requiring sprinklers, but make sure there's smoke detectors, exit plans. I guess, if you were renting a room in a motel, basically the same safety checks that you'd expect there, I guess, is what I'm looking for.
Okay.
So do you think it would help us if we defined short-term rental that I think I see 2 definitions, and this is to Ken's point. Short-term rentals, owner non-on-premise. So in other words, I think that leans towards a business to a commercial business, or short-term rentals that the owner lives on premise. And to me, that's more of a, just make sure that you have fire standards in place and insurance. Does that make sense? I think that's a kind of a 2 definition thing. One of it is someone does it for a business. The other one does it someone in their home for maybe even a hobby.
Right. We've got that under the owner occupied commercial. So Terry, are you saying though that like Ken was saying, like you would get in a motel with smoke detectors, exit plans, and stuff like that, only apply that to those in the, like what we're at least right now calling a commercial
Correct.
type situation. But if it was me renting out a room in my house,
Right.
presumably I'm living there, so it's, you know, we're not necessarily going to require a fire inspection.
Right. Does
I
that make
still think-
sense?
I still think you need the fire escape plan and documentation that there are smoke alarms.
I think you
Okay.
need the documentation. I agree with you on that, Kay, but I think as far as having an inspection, a health, safety, welfare inspection, like we would with a business, a commercial business, I think one that's in the home wouldn't have to require that, but they should present us with their plan.
Right, that's what I said, documentation. I
Yes.
didn't say inspection.
Right.
Yeah,
I would,
yes.
I would go along with that if if there was a documented plan. You know, I'm not saying we need exit lights, you know, none of the commercial items, but I think we need to protect guests that come into our community that are renting a room.
Jim, did you have, I think I heard you.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with a lot of what's being said, and I'm wondering if you're going to make them register, and at the time of registration, a quick walkthrough to make sure they do have fire alarms or smoke detectors there at the room. Because if it's occupied, there's somebody there to help that stranger that rented it for a night escape. But I think you still need in the room an exit plan. They go over that with them, and there's smoke detectors there, and that could be part of the registration requirement. And then charge a certain amount for the registration, because if you would charge, and I'm going to just pick a number, you're going to charge $75 for registration. And in that, you're going to look at all the paperwork. So you're going to have a little bit of time in it. Go to the place, give it a quick look over, say, yep, we're good, and they're certified to operate it. That $75 is probably more than you're going to make off of the income off of the property. Because how many times would they have to rent it, or how much income would they have to say, clear the $50 that's over and above the $25 it cost you to do the registration?
Yeah. Okay.
That,
all right.
But I think also with it being owner occupied, from just doing a little research this month, you don't have a lot of problems with owner occupied B&Bs. It's the unoccupied where they're renting them out for 3 or 4 days and no one's there to supervise whoever rents it.
Okay.
I agree with Jim there. I think that's probably where you're going to find more problems.
Well, and that gets us to the, registration process. I think pretty much everyone had an expectation that there would be some sort of registration so that we can identify where these are and who is operating them.
Yeah.
And then it would be a yearly registration. I'm flipping through, so that's identified. All right, so what about insurance? There were several expectations with insurance and showing proof. Are we talking standard homeowners insurance, or are you thinking more higher liability insurance, or What type of insurance?
The other municipalities document stated 300,000 or more. I know Rick said he had considerably more on his. So I think 300,000 is your typical homeowner's liability. So that would be the minimum.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. And we can do that. And of course, though, part of the registration is provide evidence of that. I'm going to get to the bigger ones here going through. So inspection through Fairfield County building. So if we write this and we have a difference between owner occupied and commercial, those commercial ones would then go through Fairfield County, correct, Terry? Because it'd be a commercial. Terry, you're on mute. Let me ask this.
But I'm shaking my head. That is correct.
Yep. So
sorry.
Let me ask this then: on a commercial Airbnb, would the fee be different because Fairfield County has to come in and do a inspection? Is there going to be an additional fee, or, you know, I'm just going to pick on Jim's $75 right here. If we had a $75 fee, would that cover the costs of that commercial inspection they're going to get as well?
No.
Can we just document that they would be responsible for covering that expense, the owner?
Well,
that's correct. So what we do currently is we have a $20 application fee for new businesses or commercial. And what that does is that starts the process going. I review where they're located, what their business is, and make sure that it's within our zoning rules and regs. Then the business owner is responsible then for applying to Fairfield County for their business application, and that's a separate fee. So to Mr. Hookrattle's train of thought, if I think I'm understanding, if it was a non-occupied business, non-occupied short-term rental, that person would only pay $20 registration fee with the village. And then once he meets within the standards, he would apply then at Fairfield County Building Department. If, however, it was a owner-occupied short-term rental, then they would do the $20 application and then maybe a $55 inspection walkthrough or whatever, something to that effect. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you can tack, something just come to mind, but yeah, what you just said, something like that, I think would work. With the commercial, make them responsible to pay whatever the county charges. Also, what I want to bring up, another item here that to talk about that has a fee associated with it, and that would be a background check, because I don't think we want a registered sex offender running a bed and breakfast.
So you want a background check on the person operating the business, not the renters coming in.
Right.
Okay.
The person operating should get that BCI check, which I think that's what, $50. And
I don't think it's that much. It might be. You might be right.
FBI might be 50.
Yeah, whatever it is. But
I think CBI is 35.
That background check, I think, is important. And it's also important when we go to the commercial side, if somebody is managing the place, that they, along with the owners, need that checked because I just worry about hidden cameras and those things. It's very easy to do.
Those are very explicitly stated in one of the documents from one of the municipalities that we reviewed. They specifically called that out.
The background checks, yeah, I think that's kind of
Not
normal.
the background check, but that you're not allowed to have any surveillance.
Well, but to Jim's point, the registered sex offender isn't necessarily going to follow the no cameras rule if they want to put cameras in there.
Yeah.
So I think we
Which is
just
why,
go up.
which is why if we have the background check, we know.
Bingo.
Okay. So background check with it, and that's part of the application process. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't, and you know, it's we do have some registered sex offenders in Baltimore, so yeah, that's
I believe 9 the last time I looked.
yeah.
Oh, great.
And that
What are we doing
doesn't
to
always,
attract these people.
I don't know, but that doesn't always mean that they're be here. They could be in Columbus and buy a property here to do bed and breakfast and be a
Right.
sex offender. So I think that Mr. Hook-Rattle's point is well taken.
Yep. Okay, good. So we will make sure we add that in. As I'm flipping through the rest of the expectations, all of these are very safety of the renter, emergency exit plans. I've seen that several times, proof of insurance, ownership. So I want to circle back then to the two big questions, which will be, one of them said penalties for non-compliance. So what type of penalty do we want to look at? And then the second big question is, in what zones are these allowed to operate? Do we only allow, where do we allow them? Do we allow them everywhere? Or do we say, owner occupied can be in the residential areas, but only the commercial ones are in if you're renting a home, it's going to be in a residential area on it. But, how do we restrict the zoning areas where all of these or classifications of them are permitted?
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry. For an example, I know exactly what the mayor's talking about. My husband brought to my attention because he knew we were talking about this case law in, I forget, what was that? It's not there, Texas, I believe, where they did restrict non-occupied short-term rentals in commercial areas only and not in residential because of the issues they were having. So I understand what you're saying, Mayor. I'm not sure whether we have that kind of issue, but there are some entities that do that. So good question.
Well, I want to chime in here a little bit. With a homeowner occupied, there may be only going to be able to rent out 1 or 2 bedrooms. And that's a car or 2 extra there on the weekend. Well, that can happen at my house if the kids come home, and it's no big deal. But if you go to one of the commercial type that's renting an entire building or house or whatever, you might have 15 or 20 cars there. Now, would you want that in a new residential area that might come into town here with new homes? I think you would want to keep the non-occupied out of your residential R1, R2, R3. You have multifamily, you might allow commercial ones in there in a business district and whatever along those lines. But I think right now we have what, R1, R2, R3, and I think that should probably be held to the lighter traffic, which would be a occupied bed and breakfast. That's just my thought.
Now, I'm trying to think worst case scenario, even if we had what's a frog, finished room over garage. That's still, on an owner occupied one, that's still the owners on the same land. You're probably still only going to get 1 or 2 cars. If we go to the commercial side, we could do that. Or is it, I don't know I guess what I'm trying to say, another option would be to limit the number of vehicles. A commercial Airbnb could allow.
Is that going to be hard to watch over? Because
yes,
it's done on the weekends mostly, and we're not staffed to do that, I don't think.
No.
Right.
I think that would be hard to enforce, Mayor.
All right. So we'll look at owner occupied in the residentials, obviously, and then the more commercial ones in a multifamily business district area where, because of the traffic and the number of vehicles that could show up. Okay.
Now, where's that going to put Mr. Foreman's property? Because you're talking like he's going to be commercial and it's located in a residential area. And are we going to grandfather him in?
Well, and that gets us back to a larger zoning question we have, which is, so that lot right there is a residential lot. Building on it's being operated as a commercial
business, according to our new
commercial business. According to new definition, I think just it's even under old definitions, it's a commercial enterprise. But Market Street right there, most of Market Street, we used to have that overlay because it's really a mixed use district. I mean, across the street you get the post office, and then across the street from that you get the Village Street Barn. And you go a couple more houses down the other way and you end up at the tattoo parlor and the heating and cooling place. So it's, I don't know where that would put that one. I mean, if we go based solely on the zoning of the land and saying what it is, it's residential use. But that area, and I would have to pull out because we did away with the Market District overlay.
Right.
But when Rick initiated his efforts, the Market Street overlay was in place. Well, I don't think it's fair to pull that rug out from under him now and say, you can't do it.
I don't think that, no, I don't think the district overlay was gone when he started. His property was in R3 when he started.
Right,
you just make it a conditional use.
So that, I mean, I guess that's an option. Make a commercial Airbnb a conditional use on a residential lot, and we can put conditions on it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Such as number of vehicles, even though again it's hard to enforce.
Right, and at that point, wouldn't you also be allowed to have input on the direct neighbors? You know, if they do not want a commercial enterprise directly next door in a strictly residential neighborhood, that would allow the input.
Yes and no. So something that's listed as a conditional use gets approved as long as it meets conditions that we've already said this is what you have to do to have a conditional use for it. It's not something that we can easily deny.
Okay.
A variance is where you get more input from the neighbors about what goes on there. So I don't know, but a conditional use still has to be applied for.
Mm-hmm.
And so that might be something we can ask Jeff about, conditional use and making sure we get input from areas and stuff like that. But okay.
Isn't like a bed and breakfast already a conditional use in like an R1, R2 as it stands? Where all we have to do is add the commercial short-term rental.
Let me check here. I need to find where I have miscellaneous. A bed and breakfast is a conditional use in all zoning areas right now. Downtown mixed use. We'll have to check. I wonder if that property falls into the downtown mixed use definition, Terry.
Yeah,
No?
I don't think it does, but I'll check it.
Yeah, but it's conditional in R1 through R3 as well. So so a commercial Airbnb would be a conditional use, and we'll check with Jeff about making sure we can solicit input from neighbors with regards to them before those are issued.
And another thing here is Rick is already established, so he would more than likely be grandfathered in. I'm thinking he would be grandfathered in from the new descriptions we're putting together.
That's my concern, Mr. Hookrattle, is that we're, changing the rules in the middle of the game on Mr. Foreman,
right,
who invested a lot of money in that property.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Now, Mr. Hookrattle and I are old enough to remember when there was a hardware store on the remainder of that property, right, Mr. Hookrattle?
Yeah, and then it was Possum Olive Pizza.
Right. So there's been some commercial in there on that actual land.
Possum Hollow Pizza.
Mm-hmm. And Palmer's Hardware.
You were really missing
2 lots down from there.
Huh.
It was on the lots that the village owns now, is where it was at.
Huh. But yeah, I think you're right. I mean, he's grandfathered in because it's an existing use, and we are changing the requirements now. I guess part of my issue there is we're changing it a little bit, but it's hard to say what the property is at the moment because, that's what started part of this is it a bed and breakfast? And if it's a bed and breakfast, it's a conditional use, and there are certain conditions that need to be met, and some of them aren't. So, but does it get, grandfathered in? It's not something where it's going to have to shut down, but it's something where compliance with registration and stuff like that will have to be done once it starts.
Okay, yeah.
Which then I think is a good segue then into what are the penalties if someone doesn't comply? If they're operating an Airbnb and they haven't registered, or if they've registered and not re-registered, or if they violate, I guess we won't really know I guess those will be the big ones, because if they to register and they give us their fire plan, we won't know if they totally do away with the fire plan until the following year when they register.
The following year, yeah, true.
So I guess the big penalty will be you're operating one and you haven't registered with the village. So what
power do you have?
We have the power that we want to write in there.
Mm-hmm.
So you can write in and you can say, you can write in and say it's a $50 fine for every day you've operated this and advertised it on Airbnb without a registration. You could make it, not that anyone would actually go to jail for this, but you could make it a jailable offense so that they could be on probation to make sure they continue to register for a year.
It'd be basically a code violation if they're not registered. Yeah, just like we do now with our code violations.
But and if you make it, the higher degree misdemeanor you go, the bigger the potential financial sanctions are. But as we're writing the new legislation, we also have the ability to say violations of this are what we would call just unclassified, and you can set the fine. And you can set them different for owner occupied versus commercial. For instance, in one municipality where I work, and do a lot of code stuff, a violation of, your business signs of signage, if it's in a house or something like that, it's not a business and you have illegal signs, it might be a $50 fine. But I have a code provision that says if you're a business enterprise, your fine's $500 because you're a business doing it. So we can differentiate between the fine structure for owner operated versus the commercial ones as well. But it's not uncommon to add language in there that says each day you've done this is a new violation, and each violation is punishable by up to X dollar fine.
Do we have violation fees for, let's say you're operating a body shop out of your home garage, but doing it as a commercial enterprise? Do we have a set fees for that?
Terry, I don't think that one's a set fee. I think that's one that you would end up in court and the magistrate would set the fine.
Correct. It's just like a code violation. You would just be wrote up for non-compliance, for not having your, business registered or whatever.
Okay.
So we've got a couple of options. One of them is obviously you set it and you say, it can be a fine up to X number of dollars per day. And then the magistrate has the ability to set that, because not all violations are always the same. Someone that continually flouts it and doesn't do anything might need a higher fine than someone that just came in and said, "Oh, I'm going to rent my room this weekend because I'm going out of town and someone else can rent it and I'll make $100." Those are two different situations. And so by saying it could be up to a $1,000 fine per day gives the magistrate then the ability to say, you're a homeowner, you didn't know, you've only lived here 6 months and you just threw it up there for a weekend to try. Okay, your fine's $25 versus no, you own this, you bought this building with the intent to rent it on Airbnb and you rented it out 30 times before we caught you, your fine's $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives them the flexibility.
And
The other way is like, right. The other way is, like I said, you can set it and say it is just a violation is X dollars per day. Me being in court, I tend to like to have the flexibility to be able to say, this one's not as egregious as that one, so that they're a little different and give some flexibility to work on stuff.
I like the per day fine because some people look at the $150 and think, it's just $150. But if it's a per day fine that accumulates, then it gets their attention.
So how that works, so you guys know, is like, let's say I find a violation in another municipality on the 10th, and this property was also inspected on the 1st, and the same violation is there. And if it's a per day violation, I've got an inspection 1 day and 10 days later. So when I go to court, I can say, I have other inspections after that, but for these 10 days, this violation existed. So give me a fine of X dollars per day for these 10 days. So it like Terry said, it can add up.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
sorry, can I cut you off? You were about to say?
In that
or
mix,
Jim?
Also in that mix, if you find a problem with a property, you have to give them so many days to fix it. You've got 10 days. Let's say it's something serious. You've got 5 to 10 days to fix it. After that, I think, is when the liability starts, wouldn't it?
Well, the difference here is on a code violation, yes, we have to give them the notice to do that. On this one, where they didn't register or they're violating it, I don't think we have to give them notice that they haven't registered. Think of it as, someone owns a dog and that dog gets loose and gets caught by the warden and that they didn't register their dog. They don't get the warning that you didn't register your dog. They get the citation for not registering their dog.
Okay.
So we wouldn't have to give them the warning here once we discovered they weren't registered. That said, I could very easily see Terry finding one that's an owner occupied and saying, oh, that person's only lived in the village a short time, or we've never had problems with this person, and picking up the phone and calling them.
Because all I care about is compliance. I don't care about.
You're not in this to make money, Terry?
No. I just care about compliance. And I think that's the number one thing. And there's been times that I picked up the phone and said, this is just to let you know in case you didn't know, and sometimes I have to send out notices and sometimes the problem gets corrected. So, yeah.
Okay. So we'll look at a per day penalty. Does anybody have any feeling on a maximum per day, or
should we check with Mr. Fico as to advice on parameters? Or do you feel qualified to go ahead and give us that information?
Well, I could probably give you that information. It depends on what you want to do. Again, we can set it, but standard ones, like I said, you can set them different, owner occupied and in commercial. But I think if you say up to $1,000 a day, that gets people's attention.
Mhm.
It gives the magistrate the ability to say this is a commercial enterprise that's just flaunting it and made a whole bunch of money, so they can get fined $1,000 a day. But it also gives them the ability to say, you know, you didn't know any better, so, you know, it's a $25 fine. And
This
you're done. This time, correct.
So tell your friends.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
Okay, so can we put that wording in for our first draft?
Absolutely.
We got it.
Absolutely. Okay. I think that covers just about everything then. At least to get started.
To get the rough draft, yeah.
To get the rough draft going, and then once we get the rough draft going, we'll be able to go through it and apply it to a situation or see how it would play out and see what we like and don't like.
The only thing, and I forgot this when I sent in my expectations, but there's and I can't find it. In my reading, there was a compliance with a code about surveillance in the area that's being occupied. Do you remember that, Terry?
I don't.
Oh, gosh.
Sorry.
Are you talking about like cameras?
Right. It referred to a
So-
specific code that they had to agree to comply with. And I'm,
Did it read something about the commons area?
Um,
no, I don't remember that.
I don't remember seeing a specific code on.
Oh, here it is. Section 2933.52 of the revised code, compliance shall also be known, non-obvious or concealed surveillance equipment. And it just says that short-term rental hosts must comply with that section of the revised code.
Okay, that's the Peepers code. Okay, yeah, we can add that.
That was in Columbus's on page 2, on the back of page 1. I had highlighted it. I finally
All right, so that's referring to a Columbus ordinance they have about cameras, but I can pull that and we can include that. Yeah.
Okay, all right. That was the only thing that I had noticed.
Isn't there already probably something like that in the Ohio revised code?
Yeah, there's one in the revised code as well, something similar. I'll let you guys in on a little secret. Most municipal codes pretty much read like the Ohio revised code.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll get. Okay, yep, we can add that.
Okay, that's the only thing I.
Okay.
But
So
one
what
other
we'll
thing
do is-
I think
Yeah.
we ought to have is, I mean, whether or not you're occupying, owner occupied or you're renting it as a commercial enterprise, it's still a business.
yes,
I believe you should have a business license.
I agree.
Something maybe just as simple as a vendor's license.
Well, from who?
Well,
From us, like a contractor's license, or from the
Oh,
like
that's
the
very
Ohio
good.
Secretary of State?
I was thinking from the state.
Oh,
So anybody doing one, we want to force to get basically just register with the Secretary of State.
Well, I guess I always understood that any type of business that you're operating as a commercial enterprise, you need to register.
You should, but there are a lot of sole proprietorships
I see.
which don't register.
So it's not a requirement then?
It's not a requirement.
Oh, I've been misled for 40 years. Jeez.
Well, I wouldn't call it misled. Anybody, all of us attorneys will tell you you should register and set it up as a separate entity to protect yourself from personal liability. So you should.
Okay.
And there are certain industries where you do have to, but I don't know if this one would fall in it. But if that's something we want to put in there, obviously we can. We can say must be registered to conduct business in the state of Ohio with the Secretary of State.
I personally feel that we ought to have that.
Okay.
We'll put it in the draft.
Yep, you can register. I mean, by that regard, someone that just registers their trademark name, hey, Baltimore Villas Airbnb. It's a registered trademark name with the Secretary of State would qualify there, but at least then there's something with the Secretary of State about their business. So, okay. Okay.
I think we got good information to start our draft.
I think so too.
Anything else? If not, we'll start on that draft.
Yep.
And then we'll get that out and get it to everybody ahead of time so that everyone has time to read it before the next meeting, so we can go through it, see what works and what doesn't.
Perfect.
All right. In that case,
I believe that the method we used here of having everyone bring in the input and then putting it together into a sheet, I think was very helpful.
Good.
Thank you, Barb.
I think so too. And in fact, I think on stuff like this in the future, we should maybe follow this model and use it a little more.
Yep. I do too. I think it's very good. This is what I do with my staff guys when we talk about projects. We do the same thing, put together a list like that. So yeah, it's a good tool.
Yeah.
Good.
All right. So let me ask. Okay, it's 8:06. We got ducks, and we've also got a new business item. So let's go through.
I would
Ducks
say
are pretty easy.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
ducks
If you
are
want
pretty
to, I
easy.
just want to allow time for the Walnut Township because I want to add that to my communication letter, what this committee thinks. So whatever you think, I'm good.
Okay. Well, I think ducks are pretty easy. So go ahead, Kay.
Well, I am ready to approve Terry's document that she sent us. I reviewed all of it, and I think she took care of that completely. She knows what complaints she's had, so she knew what we needed to add to what we had previously in our document. If it's going to be a 4-H one, they're not going to be. You're only going to have them for 6 weeks. I don't know if you want to designate market as opposed to breeding birds, because the market birds, they only have them for 6 weeks. So yeah, no fee. But if they're going to have breeding ducks and, fancy chickens, like I know we have in town, then you're going to have a long-term issue where you might have to address the tarps and the smell, and thus they should be registered. So,
well, and I think that's why where it's listed as the exceptions for youth projects are available is good, because then that says, okay, this is a youth project, they can contact, and then we have the policy and Terry can have the conversation. Is this a market duck?
or is
Yes, it is.
breeding?
Okay, great. Oh, this is a breeding duck. That's going to follow under because you're going to have it for a longer period of time. So, okay.
So
Well,
I move that do we need to send this to council then?
Yeah, so this would go to council. So that would be the motion to approve the changes in this and send it to council.
That would be my motion then.
All right. Is there a second?
I had one concern.
Okay.
On the coop size has to be 100 square feet or less to not require a zoning permit. Right now, we're allowing yard barns, and I'm sorry I did not look it up, but we're allowing yard barns, I believe, up to, I don't remember the number on that, but I thought we were allowing larger on those.
No, I think when the kids wrote this up, we researched it and it was under 100 square feet doesn't require.
Okay, so it's the same for yard barns then.
Yep, it's the same for yard barns.
It's the
Okay,
same.
that was my one concern, because other than that, I'm good with it.
Because I remember the kids making a model to see if it, would
Aw.
work. And they're per ratio, per space, per bird. So that was researched.
Good deal. So is that the second of the motion then, Ken?
I'll second that. Yes, thank you.
All right. And then roll call. Well, further discussion, I should say. All right, roll call there, Terry.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes?
Mr. Mager,
Yes.
Mr. Hookrattle,
Yes.
Mayor,
Yes. All right, we'll get that to council. Which then gets us to new business. Which the one item that I know we have on new business is the letter we got from Fairfield County Regional Planning and Commission about rezoning of some land in Walnut Township just outside the village. And then we got this on February 2nd, and they needed a decision by February 22nd. My original hope had been we would be able to talk to planning and zoning first about this and then go to council, but they won't. The next council meeting is the 22nd, so we won't meet that deadline and they can't extend it. So we had to have the discussion in council this past Monday about this. One of the big things, and at least that I noticed that was a problem we had in discussing it in council, was between the village limits and 37, all of that land that's in Walnut Township will someday be in the village. We don't know when, but it will happen. There are annexation agreements on a number of those parcels already. So we know it will happen. We just don't know when. And we didn't have a comprehensive plan for what we as a village would like to see out that way. Added into that, a local resident has already purchased one of the 80-acre lots and is planning a mixed-use commercial residential development on, that would be what, the southeast corner?
North side.
No, southwest corner of 37 and 256. Is looking, also got, was that 60 acres there, Terry, on the north side of 256, just outside of the village limit?
I think that's 100.
Is it?
I think it's closer to 100.
Okay.
I thought it was 88 acres.
Oh, that's possible.
Okay. Anyway, a lot of acres right there, and is interested in the farmland that is sitting right next to this parcel that is being, that wants rezoned. Again, we didn't have a comprehensive plan. Right now, there's some commercial out there. There's a little bit of residential, and so it was kind of, what do we want to see out there? After a lot of discussion, there was a vote to object. The motion was to object to this zoning change, and that passed by 4-2. So Terry is preparing a letter to Fairfield County Regional Planning, noting that we would object to this change from what is right now a residential plot to a general industrial district. Now, what regional planning does in Walnut Township, they solicited our input, But you know, we're not the decision makers in this case, so we just get to provide the input there.
My concern, though, where you have more justification for input, is that when we discuss the drainage issues, that drainage system runs right through that property that then comes around behind the wooded area and comes into the property that is in Liberty Township and in the village that we were discussing with Mr. Woods. So it does have a direct influence. If they obstruct the drainage or add, you know, they will, if they pave that lot and put in a storage unit, they'll be flooding that water drainage system that will impact residents of your village. I think they give more power to your statement than just saying we disagree.
Right. Well, and Terry's still, we're still working on the full language, but so far, give me a second here, it'll read something along the lines of, the
one from Jeff was the one I was looking at.
Yep. While we welcome new business and development to the area, the village believes that the future of this area is residential and commercial residential mixed-use development, and therefore an I-2 industrial zoned parcel would be inconsistent with those plans. A local developer has already purchased land in the area for development and is interested in additional land adjacent to this parcel. Based on this, and after much discussion, Baltimore Village Council voted to formally object to this rezoning change. You know, quite frankly, one of my concerns when I first brought this parcel up on the map is it's literally right next door to a house, and there are at least 2 or 3 homes just behind on the back end of the parcel. So it's not like it's not like it would be the storage units on 256 on the other side of the tracks away from residential areas.
Oh, okay. Let me interject something here. Has that letter already been sent to regional planning?
No.
With what Kay is bringing up, that would trigger regional planning to get soil and water up there and make them put together a drainage plan, which would take that business out of the picture. Where homes, you've got yards to help take care of holding the water for evaporation and stuff. I agree with Kay. That needs to go in there because even when it goes to regional planning, that's only a suggestion that goes back to Walnut Township. Now, if we've got that in there, that it's going to cause drainage problems out of Walnut Township, that's going to trigger Walnut Township trustees to look at it also. If you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
In addition to us, Jim, South Central Power, ODOT District 5, and the Soil and Water Conservation District received the same letter with the information. So Soil and Water was notified of this change.
Okay.
This change request, I should say.
So you're going to allow them to make this statement involving drainage instead of Baltimore?
Oh, I think we can put something in there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we can put. I think
it's a good
I
suggestion.
thought you were implying that wasn't.
No. I'm just saying. I'm just because Jim had talked about making sure it triggers soil and water, and they were included on this.
Okay.
No, I think it's a great suggestion.
Go ahead, Bev.
Well, if I can interject here, I have put in a request through Walnut Township that they have a professional engineer and complete evaluation of the site before any zoning change or building takes place. So, you know, that is my hope, to try to get as many people involved as I can to look at this problem and see if we can get it fixed.
So did you get notification, Bev, from Fairfield County Planning?
No, I've been working with Terry Horn, who is the president of Walnut Township Trustees.
No, I mean, did you and the other neighbors get notification, like the neighbors along 256? Do they know this is going in or could
No.
go in?
No. Not that I am aware of, no. No one has been notified. I don't think anyone back on Witherspoon. And there will be 2 lots behind that 8 acres on Witherspoon that it'll directly drain onto. To my knowledge, Thomas/Ryan Mulcahy next to me, who is selling his home, he was not notified.
That's the house right next to the land.
Yes, that's the house right next to the land. I figured I had not been notified because I'm not contingent, but he wasn't either. So he wasn't notified either, and he is contingent.
Is that right, Mayor? Would they, I mean, and if it was in town, we would notify all neighbors.
If it was in town, we would notify all adjacent properties.
Yes, yes. Wow.
I can't speak to Walnut Township's zoning code or adherence to revised code on zoning matters. So let's do this though. So we want to also include a letter or a note, because we do have a little bit of time to get this in. So obviously, Terry, by the way, when we put together the letter, obviously we changed the last night village council to the meeting date, since
Yes, yes.
we'll be sending it out.
Don't send
but
it in the mail or they won't get it by the 22nd.
Oh, no, it's going to
That's the
go
truth.
to James.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going by, but let's have a motion and then a roll call vote on including language in the village response regarding this Walnut Township zoning request that says the Planning and Zoning Commission has concerns with water drainage and an increase in potential flooding issues in affecting village property. I think if we do a motion like that, and then Terry and Jeff can talk about the details of how that'll be worded, but I think it's important for the record that we have that as a motion coming from this commission.
I think it should say village residents properties as well.
Okay.
Okay, so we need to make the statement, which is my motion, that the letter include the village's concern for this property to have an adverse effect. Its drainage would have an adverse effect on the current drainage situation that jeopardizes the residents of the village of Baltimore.
Jeopardizes and could negatively affect property usage and value.
Okay, good addition. We don't have to go through the amendment to do that. You can just add that in.
Yep.
Right.
All right. Is there a second on that motion to add that?
I would second that.
All right. Do we have any other discussion on adding the language to the village response to this zoning request change we got from Walnut Township? All right, hearing none. Roll call, Terry.
Ms. Williamson,
Yes,
Mr. Mager,
Yes.
Mr.
All right. So we will do that, and then I'm sure once Terry gets the full letter out, we'll copy everybody on P&Z with it when it goes out as well.
Yes.
All right.
Wow. We got
Is
so much
there
done
any-
tonight.
I know.
I
we're
know.
little bees.
Whoop, whoop.
Is there any other new business? All right.
New business coming soon to the Planning and Zoning Committee. Trust me.
Bev, do you have anything else? We got visitors at the beginning and we had you there for the new business, but I'll give you a chance here at the end of the meeting if you've got anything else. Bev?
No, thank you for the information and the support.
All right,
Absolutely.
no problem.
Absolutely.
All right, so our next meeting then is set for March 11th, 2021 at 7 p.m. And we will have a draft out before then of the short-term rental. All right, with that, having no other business, we can adjourn.
Yay.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Okay, boys,
I'll
are you
make
gonna
that.
jump on this?
All right, I think that was a motion and a second. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Bye.
All right, all opposed? Hearing none, or as I heard all day today, with unanimous consent, we are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
you.
Good meeting.
Good
Good
meeting.
night.
You're
Good meeting.
Thanks to
invaluable.
Mark for all of her hard work of putting everything together. We really appreciate her.
Oh, she
Yes.
loves it.
And I appreciated the gentle reminder. I had been working on it, but I hadn't sent it in. And I was like, oh, I was afraid it
Okay.
was last Thursday. And I was like, oh, that's just the gentle reminder that we need to get ours turned in. So,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.